Alright, Yoda dudes. Today, I'm going to be bringing you a bit different of a video. As the title suggests, today we're going to be going over how I personally believe Thanos' kit should work in Marvel Rivals. Not to toot my own horn here too much, but I think that this would be the easiest and the best way for his kit to work fundamentally with all of the different things that's going on within his story and his character. What I've come up with is the most simple way to do it without giving you dozens of abilities for each stone, so on and so on. Now, as always, if you disagree with me at any point, or if you think something should be reworked, or just a different ability entirely, let me know down in the comments below. Now, without any more delay, let's get into building the Mad Titan himself.
But this does put a smile on my face.
Now, starting off, Thanos is easily a vanguard. His size and stature makes him almost perfect for the tank role. For the style of tank that Thanos would play as, I feel like he would be a bit more of like a tactical tank, where he would focus on more shutdowns and utility. Most of the abilities I decided to make a bit more shutdown oriented or helping his team. Now, because of that tactical mind, I decided to make most of his abilities oriented around helping his team or shutting down the enemy team's plan. I feel like that sort of play style would fit Thanos best for both lore and gameplay purposes. Now let's get into the fun. Now, I debated back and forth on what I was going to make his primary fire. Originally, I was considering whether or not I just wanted him to be another melee-focused character that just punched, kind of like the Thing, or maybe the Hulk with a little more finesse. Now, if you remember from Endgame, Thanos has a enormous twin blade. Now, this thing doesn't get much screen time at all. Actually, I'm pretty sure the first time we see it is in Endgame. Honestly, who could blame it? The Infinity Gauntlet is probably one of, if not the most powerful thing in the Marvel Universe. I decided to make his primary fire the twin blade. Some sort of Elden Ring-esque fighting style where you can just kind of swing it back and forth. Because we don't really have a sword fighting tank yet. And I think it would be really interesting for Thanos not to just clobber the shit out of his opponents, but actually have some semblance of technique with his swordplay. Now, with that, I would also take some notes from magic, and I would allow some melee weaving into his swordplay. So he can slash a couple times with both ends of the blade, maybe deliver a punch in with it. I would make the sword be in his offhand and the gauntlet on his left hand, like how it was in the movie. I think it would be awesome if on Thanos' attacks you saw like a purple accent where you can see the Power Stone helping him with his strength. Or after he hits someone, maybe there's like a purple flash or like just a little sparkle effect or something. But I think it would add a nice little flare. It is already devastating. As for his secondary fire, I would make it a ranged sword hurl. As we saw him do several times in Endgame, he takes his sword and either throws it like a spear or he'll spin it, kind of like a boomerang, and it comes back to him. I went back and forth on whether or not this ability would hit someone and come back, or if it would hit someone, stay in them, and then he would switch to like a melee attack kind of style. But what I decided to go with was him throwing the sword and then actually piercing it through enemies and hitting multiple people. It'll circle back to him like a boomerang. Another cool thing about this ability is if it's mid-air spinning through and someone comes up to you and you need to use your sword, you can hit the ability again and he'll use the Space Stone to teleport it back into his hand so that he can get right back to fighting. Little tiny ways of using the stones like that is more or less how I focus for this. I wanted to make sure that I worked in Thanos actually using the stones in his other abilities that aren't stone oriented, because Thanos is a monster without a stone. He's still one of the strongest creatures in the MCU. I mean, he conquered most of the universe before deciding to go get the Infinity Stones to just make it easier on himself. Back to the spinning sword, I think the piercing would be great to help him build ult charge. We'll talk more about the ultimate later, but for now, let's go ahead and get into what his actual melee would be, the punch. I would make it a mix between some of the martial arts techniques we see Iron Fist use and the sheer size and power of Hulk. Something that I was thinking of a lot during this was the Thing, and he uses real boxing techniques. These are actual fighting styles, and to see someone big like the Thing move like that, it's actually pretty interesting. I would follow that loosely with Thanos because he is a very well-trained fighter, and I would want his melee to look as similar to the fight with Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War as I could. Now we've got his first real ability. By pressing shift, you can activate something I call Soul Guard, where he kind of raises his fist similar to the way Doomfist did in Overwatch, and activate the Soul Stone, where he would take a % of all damage incoming and convert it directly into overshields. While I also think this ability could fit the Reality Stone, I struggled to come up with another ability for the Soul Stone that wasn't just an Adam Warlock ripoff. Overall, the Soul Stone doesn't have much screen time. We don't really get to see what it does that often, but I wanted to kind of lean into that tank version of some Adam Warlock style ability, where instead of just, getting a second life whenever he dies as a part of having the Soul Stone, instead he focuses a bit more on tanking and taking incoming damage from the rest of his team in order to convert it into more health for him so that he can keep taking space. As a tank player, I think that this ability would be really strong in low ranks, but as you climb, you need to be more and more strategic with it. And I also think it would be a great way to counter specific ults like Magneto or Punisher. And the reason I think it would be better at low ranks than it is at high ranks is because people have a lot more trigger control in higher ranks. Something as we've seen in Overwatch, like with Zarya. Zarya will run house in low ranks of Overwatch, because everybody shoots her bubbles and everybody gives her ultra, everybody gives her charge, so she can deal as much damage as possible. With this, it would be an ability where people are shooting the tank, they're shooting the tank, you pop it, they don't even realize you popped it, they're still shooting you, giving you just tons and tons of help, and making you into the Mad Titan. Another idea I had was at the end of this ability, after taking in all of his overshield, he then fires back, similar to Mr. Fantastic's shielding ability, but I would make this one not have a cap. Because when I thought about it, I was thinking back to the scene from Avengers Endgame where Thanos fought our heroes on Titan, right when Tony flew under and dropped Hiroshima on him again, and Thanos just absorbed all the fire and blasted it back at him. This is an ability we hadn't seen him use yet, and while I do believe it partially could have been the Space Stone that allowed him to do it, he did just get the Soul Stone before coming here. Now for his final non-Infinity Stone related ability, we have Titan's Strike. This is where Thanos rears back and deals a devastating blow to an enemy. Now, if his enemy is holding up a shield, it immediately knocks his shield down and puts it on a 4-second cooldown. This idea really came from whenever Thanos was just beating the dog shit out of Cap's shield, taking off just chunks of it. And I wanted to make that a reality with putting any shield on cooldown. Another interesting thing is I would have the 4-second cooldown still apply even if the shield is broken by the attack. So you can flash your shield up at Thanos to block the damage coming in from it and only have your shield taken down, but it adds 4 seconds on top of that cooldown you would have had before. I can also see many areas where this would make for some really great counterplay. Let's say Punisher wants to ult, and after he ults, then Doctor Strange holds up his shield. You could then come in, knock his shield down, and now his whole team is vulnerable to the Punisher's ult. Now, granted, Punisher's probably gonna die anyway, but I think it's just a great way to counter shield tanks, and not really something I've ever seen before. For his E ability, this will cover every single Infinity Stone that he has, except for Soul. Now, my idea was instead of giving him a bunch of individual abilities for each stone, and having him use several different buttons to activate each one, I would instead give him a kind of Doom Eternal-esque weapon wheel, where he can hold the button. For this I said hold R, and he can choose between which stone he wants to activate with his E. And it's very similar to Doom Eternal. I would also have it where if you tap R, since obviously Thanos doesn't have anything to reload, he would switch back to the last stone he used. So you technically would have 2 active at a time, where you can use one, hit R, flip back to the other one, and if you hit R again, you flip back. Now with each use of a stone, you grant yourself additional overshield on top of their game-changing ability. I really wanted to make them feel like they're pieces of the universe that he's now using as a weapon. Now starting out, one of the simplest stones to actually utilize, in my opinion, was Power. Now the Power Stone is the only one that breaks the rule that I just mentioned. But with the Power Stone, it is primarily focused on what we see him use the Power Stone for against Captain Marvel in Endgame, where he has to pop it out, hold it in his hand, and beam her with it. Now I would make this be a bit bigger of a blast, and when Thanos uses it, it pushes people back and deals a certain amount of damage to them. Now if anyone was holding up a shield for this, it would also push them back if it hit the shield. So I really wanted Thanos to just be an anti-shield character, because as we saw whenever he was fighting Captain America, he has a really big shield phobia. He was aiming for that shield again and again and again. Now the only character that would be nearly immune to this stone would be the Thing, because he is completely immune to CC. So if you beamed him with it, he would take the damage, and then he would be able to keep moving forward. Now secondly, we have the Space Stone. The Space Stone I wanted to take after the very first time we see him use it in Infinity War. where he clenches his fist after breaking the Tesseract, putting the stone in, and he clenches his fist, and he brings himself and the entirety of the Black Order exactly where he wants it. Now, I would have this be a portal that Thanos opens, but to save all of your GPUs, it would not be a strange style portal where there's just a hole and then you jump through and you're suddenly on another part of the map. Instead, this would be extremely similar to the teleportation areas we have in the Central Park map. With the second point on attack, there are these walls you walk up to and you hit G, or I don't know what button it is on console, and they teleport you to certain areas in order to take your attack from. It's that area with Blade in it. When Thanos activates his ability, he then has to select an area on the ground to teleport himself to, and then anyone else can walk up to this area, hit G, and teleport with him. So it is a bit more of a confirmation style teleport than a Doctor Strange style teleport. So now let's move on to the Reality Stone. Now I threw around what I wanted the Reality Stone to do a lot. And originally I was going to have it create a bubble around him that converted all incoming damage either into just nothing or converting it into healing. Kind of taking after the scene where he fights Star-Lord and then he finally pulls the trigger and bubbles come out. But I decided against that one because I felt like giving him an ability that just negates damage as long as you're in this circle was a little strong. And he's not a support character, so giving him the equivalent of an unbreakable Loki lamp, that seemed way overpowered. So I decided to switch it up, and instead I made it so that he creates an AoE around him that turns everyone invisible. I'd also like for it to have that ring that Cloak has whenever he disappears into the sky and tries to fly away. You can still see the area of effect. I would want it to have that too. So the enemy team would have a rough idea of where you are. If Thanos takes enough damage to get rid of the overshield given by the Reality Stone's ability, then he is forced to drop it. I wanted there to be some sort of counterplay against this because being able to just turn your entire team invisible as long as you're alive is strong. And I would have a duration on it so he couldn't just constantly hold it. I also really like this ability because it would allow for Thanos to help people get out of it. I see it more as a way to back up than a way to get in. If Thanos knows that he's going to lose this fight and he needs to back up in order not to stagger, he can turn himself invisible, maybe himself and a couple allies get out, without dying and staggering themselves for the next fight. Now for the Time Stone. This one was tricky. Originally the Time Stone was just going to be an AoE stun similar to the Doctor Strange's Eye of Mama Coco. I decided to go against that because having an ability version of an ultimate from another tank, it just made Thanos seem like he was trying to be a better version of Strange. So instead, I flipped over to a second idea, where I was going to pay some sort of homage to Squirrel Girl beating him by making the Time Stone be a cooldown refresher. So then he can use the Time Stone and immediately use one other ability, whether it be another Infinity Stone ability, his Titanic Punch, anything. And afterwards, it would go on a really long cooldown. But I also didn't really like that one, just because it didn't seem grandiose enough for a Time Stone. Obviously, there was some counterplay I thought of that would be really cool for it, but overall, I thought it would just get annoying. So instead, what I decided to go with was whenever Thanos uses the Time Stone, he stops the game clock for a minute. So neither team can get any more progression, and the clock does not tick down. I think this would be a great ability to use during overtime, or if a team is just about to cap a point, and you can force one more fight. This is a little bit stronger of an ability than I was previously going to go with, but I felt like as an Infinity Stone, it would fit a little bit better being a potential game-changing ability rather than just a simple refresher for him to keep using another ability. Now, because of the strength of this ability, I would have it spawn in as Thanos. It is already on cooldown. I would have him spawn with that cooldown active, ticking down, so that you couldn't just play one character for the entire game, switch Thanos whenever you're in overtime, stop the clock, and then just constantly swap on and off to keep stopping the clock, because your abilities would reset whenever you swap characters. I saw that as a good workaround for it. That way, Thanos wasn't just an end game pick, and instead he was more of a payoff, where he's strong in the game, and then at the end, if you played him the entire time, you also get a little bit more time on the clock. Now for our final Infinity Stone, in case you did miss it, Soul Stone is going to be Soul Shield. That is direct use of the ability. That's the only one that's outside of this wheel. But for our final stone, we are going to be doing Mind Stone. Now, I really like the ability I came up for this one, but I did toss around other ones. Like, for example, I thought about being able to use the Mind Stone as a mind control. So for a second, you can turn someone on the enemy team into your ally. So for example, if your Luna's ulting, you can use the Mind Stone. Now that's your ult. But that seems way too powerful. So instead, I decided to go with what I would probably put as one of the lower cooldown Infinity Stones. Now, using the Mind Stone, it would allow you to view the enemy's ult charge for just a few seconds. And while I'm aware that most high-end players can kind of gauge when someone has an ultimate or where someone's at in their ult charge, I think that this would make for a great way for lower tier players to have a little more incentive to learn and build that skill. This also helps with encouraging lower ranked players to counterplay a bit more, where instead of just thinking, oh, I'm going to go in an ult, they're starting to think, oh, they have this ult, so when I'm going to wait till they use that to use mine, which is a little higher ranked way of thinking. Now, with the stones out of the way, and probably a lot of people upset at me, let's move on to his passive that I mentioned a while ago. I call his passive Conquering Fury. Now, this would act as a meter at the center of your screen, similar to Doctor Strange, but instead of dealing damage, it's whenever you receive damage, gradually that meter starts to fill up. Now, depending on how much charge you have on this ability, it would directly determine how much knockback and how much damage your Power Stone's beam does. As well as if you hold onto this charge, you deal a percent more primary fire damage. I would give it a visual representation on the actual character, where similar to how when Thanos plucks the stone out and holds it in his bare hand, you can see it crack his hand and give him all these purple veins down his hand. We also see that happen with Ronan in Guardians 1 and all of the Guardians in Guardians 1. But yeah, then when using this passive, you have this interesting dynamic between, do you want to save your charge to deal more damage with your melee, or do you want to use it to try to boop someone off the map, or just push the whole team back? Additionally, I would also allow this passive to be affected while in Soul Guard. So you can be blocking damage with the Soul Stone and still be gaining that passive Fury. So with this ability, Thanos becomes a lot more of a low rank dominating tank, where with everyone shooting at him, he's constantly going to be getting full charge. He's constantly going to be able to get off his beam attack, get more overshield. He is going to be strong low rank, but he's also going to force people to learn not to shoot the tank if they want to win. That's not to say that you can't kill Thanos. He still has a very fair amount of health, so you could shred him down before he's able to get any of his abilities off. But you also have to be careful, because if you try to shred him down and he uses his soul shield, you're giving him a ton of health. Now, additionally, this would make it an interesting dynamic for Thanos players to climb, because as they get higher in rank, less and less people are going to be shooting them and giving them the charge that they so desperately need. And that's going to require a bit more focus on their point and a little more play in order to take damage, or to walk in front of ultimates in order to use their soul guard to get that charge to then snowball the enemy team. Alright, now with his main abilities done, let's move on to my personal favorite that I came up with, which is his team up. Now when it came to coming up with a team up that he could have, it was fairly difficult, because there isn't many people who would work with Thanos. The only person I could really think of was Loki, and I couldn't think of a good ability team up for those two. The team up I did decide to go with, I call Cursed with Knowledge. Within this team up, it allows Thanos and Iron Man to team up, allowing Iron Man his own use of the Mind Stone, where he can see the enemy's ult charge for a moment. And in return, Thanos gets the Nano Gauntlet. Now, I would make this a real change on the skin if you're still using the classic skin, where he actually puts on the Nano Gauntlet instead of the regular Infinity Gauntlet. Now, the bonuses he gets from the Nano Gauntlet are that it boosts the Power Stone. So now the Power Stone acts a bit more like Iron Man's secondary function, where it depletes your charge over time, and it acts as more of a resource. So the beam is no longer just a flash, it's now a push. It's a constant beam now. It deals a little bit more damage, it pierces, and it knocks back a little harder. I would make this ability act in a similar way to how Captain America and Thor's team up works, where Captain America has to hit C, or whatever button you've bound to, in order to activate his shield throw. I would have it be the same thing, where Thanos has to hit C, or his team up button, in order to activate the beam charge so that he can switch between the pulse and the beam. All right, now for the main event, what you've all been waiting for, the ultimate. Obviously, the ultimate is the snap. How was I going to balance erasing half the universe with a single snap? And I think I did a fairly good job. Thinking back on it now versus when I came up with it, I don't think the ult is nearly as powerful as I made it out to be in the beginning of the episode, but nonetheless, Thanos lifts his gauntlet, he has a bit of a build-up time, and then he snaps his fingers, which immediately halves the enemy's maximum HP for a few seconds. I would make it powerful by duration, because having half HP, now that means, let's say you have Bucky, they can then ult, and now suddenly they only really have less than a third of their maximum HP. Because if they even get tickled, then they're dead. That threshold is gone. So I think it would also be, so that makes it a great way for still be able to get kills despite there being multiple support. Now, because I feel like this ability could be very powerful, as it doesn't have a range on it. It is just he snaps his fingers and everyone is at half HP. I don't like that it doesn't have a range on it. That's one thing that I'm not in love with about this. Actually, no. I would give it a really big range, but I would make it range so that you couldn't just die, respawn, snap your fingers, go to the fight, you won. That way, you have to be in the fight. Leave a comment down below on which one you prefer. I'm a little torn right now between if it should be unlimited range or ranged. Let me know what you think down below. For his actual ultimate voice line, I would have it be,
I am inevitable.
And then his friendly voice line,
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Now during this time, it actually is very important to protect Thanos while he's aura farming, because he can't move and he's slowly raising his hand to snap while saying his voice lines, as I said before. It is important to still guard Thanos while he's aura farming, because he's not immune to CC during it. I would like for him to be immune to CC during it, but it just doesn't make sense with Thanos as he is. One of the biggest points in Infinity War is that Mantis can sleep him. So it would just be disingenuous for me to make him completely immune to CC during it. Now additionally, I would have so that if anyone is already at half HP, they immediately turn to dust. Similar to how Wanda's ult works. But yeah, I would have them turn to dust, and I would have a specific moment where when Spider-Man gets hit by it, would say, I don't feel so good. I just think that would be really cute. Here's some cute ideas that I had for cosmetics for Thanos in Marvel Rivals. I had 4 ideas for skins. First one I came up with was comic book Thanos, obviously. One of the best designs of Thanos I've ever seen. MCU Thanos is another obvious one. Then I would do King Thanos. After King Thanos, I would do Farmer Thanos from Endgame. I love the design of Farmer Thanos, especially as a skin. I think it would be really funny. For some emotes, I think the only real emote I could come up with, other than him snapping his fingers with his non-gauntleted hand, I thought it would be really cool for him to be able to emote and use his throne from the first Guardians movie when we first see him. Another idea I had was a duo emote with Captain America, where if Captain America is emoting using the Infinity Gauntlet grab emote, then Thanos can opt in, and instead of it just being a disembodied Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos actually puts his hand there, and they both just go back and forth, pushing against each other. Now, I don't really care for sprays, so I'm not going to go into that, as those are, no one cares. For his MVP screens, one thing that I think would be awesome is the fight on Titan. Obviously, the final fight of Endgame, frozen after his snap, right before he realizes that there's no stones in the gauntlet. That would be awesome. And then there's my personal favorite. My personal favorite MVP screen, where you just get to see him take his helmet off and then beat the shit out of Hulk. And then the freeze frame is right after he knocks Hulk's tooth out, and you freeze right on the frame of Hulk's face getting messed up. I think that would be hilarious. Alright, well, that's how I would make Thanos in Marvel Rivals. Honestly, making Thanos balanced as all things should be was really tough, but I think my idea of the combat wheel for the stones and then having them set to one ability is by far the best way of doing it. I've seen many other people try to give him just a slew of abilities for each stone, or bunching up a couple ones together. I think the best way is what I've come up with. As always, if you disagree or if you think there's a better way to do it, let me know in the comments. Also, If you have any characters that you want to see me try to create a Marvel Rivals build for, I do this mostly for fun. So it would be awesome if people actually enjoyed this style of video and wanted to see more. I've got some more Marvel Rivals-esque videos like this coming out soon. One I contemplated doing that would never happen would be Conquest from Invincible. I really wanted to put him in Marvel Rivals, see what that would look like. I've got an idea to do a Condiment King episode if DC Rivals was ever a thing. Additionally, I also had an idea, or if Skylanders came back and dropped a hero shooter style game, what some of the builds may be, what some of the maps may look like, what some of the story might be. That video is in the works. It'll be coming out soon. Yeah, I loved making this video. I'll definitely do more. If you have any ideas, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.